Well, hello there. I want to start this video with a question. Does Father's Day bring up hard feelings for you or give you anxiety? Right? Does it feel like you kind of can't get away from all of the promotion for Father's Day, social media posts about Father's Day, all the things? If so, then this video is for you, my friend, because in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down how to handle grief around Father's Day. If you have grief, and you may have it for a lot of different reasons, which I'm going to get into in this episode, and I'm going to give you some alternate ways to basically manage the day, other things that you can do. So before we get started, if you happen to be new to this YouTube channel, well, hello and welcome. Please introduce yourself in the comments. We are a friendly group. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell icon so you get notified every time we roll out something new, which is every Tuesday and every Thursday. You know why? I wouldn't want you to miss a thing. All right. If you happen to be new here, my name is Terri Cole. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I am the author of Boundary Boss, which you can get at boundarybossbook.com. Thank you for all of your questions and your comments. I read them all, as you know, and I just love to be a part of this community, and I super appreciate you. So I want to highlight a comment from Allison under the video, Emotional Invalidation in Relationships, What You Need to Know. And Allison says, YouTube channels such as yours have taught me more than going to counseling has. Right on. Thank you for the work you do. It's so very relevant today. Best wishes. Well, Allison, thank you for taking the time. I really do appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. All right, let's get into today's content, shall we? All right, so Father's Day is a special occasion. This is something that we are raised, especially in the U.S. and probably all of North America, to acknowledge and celebrate the father figures in our life. I'm going to start with a little story about my own journey with my own father, that even as a kid, Father's Day was hard because my father was a guy who had 4 daughters. I was his 4th daughter, and I always had the feeling he probably would have been better off with sons, or at least one son. He was an athlete. He was very successful in his business, but he did not have a very high emotional IQ. Let's just say that. He wasn't great with kids, and we were all kind of scared of him, and we didn't know him. So what we did know about him is that he golfed. So every Father's Day, we made him cards, and we got him things that had to do with golf. That's it. That's all we knew about him, basically. But even as I got older, it never felt supernatural. I would go to the store after my parents got divorced when I was 13, try to pick a card and be like, oh, this could be good. No, there were no good cards that in any way, shape, or form mirrored or resonated with my lived experience with my father, which is that I sort of felt like, especially when I was a teenager and going into my early 20s, that we were like essentially strangers. So it was just a day that even when we spent it with him, I always had this nagging feeling or this sense of longing because I wished it was different. I wanted it to be different. I remember saying to my therapist, Bev, at the time, I just don't understand why I couldn't have had the father that wanted daughters, and I desperately wanted to be a daddy's little girl type of a girl, But you can't do that if you don't have that type of a father. And finally, after years of talking about this in therapy, she was like, Tara, you have to really accept. If you keep wishing that your father were a different person, you're going to feel the same frustration and longing and pain that you're feeling right now. So let me ask you a question. So she basically gave me an assignment, and she was like, can you feel loved by the way that your father is actually capable of loving you? And I was like, I don't know, because keep in mind, right, the way I wanted to be loved is like cozy verbal affection, physical affection, being the apple of somebody's eye, basically. And so I thought about it, and I came in the next week with my list. So she's like, okay, so what are the things that your father does or has done for you that you could see them through the lens of love? And I was like, well, he paid for college, which is damn nice. I mean, this is when I was in college. I was like, he's paying for college. He bought me a used car. He fixed my teeth. And then the last one I said is every time I leave his house, when I would go visit him and his girlfriend, he would yell, strap in, as we pulled away. He also taught me about investing, like that I should save for retirement. Not that I actually did that very much, but he's like, if you save this amount, then I'll match it, and just tried to teach me fiscal responsibility. It took a really long time for me to get it, but those were the things that I could point out. And I had this epiphany, even at that young age in my life, that since my father wasn't going to change, that potentially I could change the way that I viewed his dutiful nature, right? So he was dutiful, meaning he would do the right things. He had 4 daughters. He gave us each X amount of money towards a wedding, towards a house, towards whatever we wanted. And it wasn't a crazy amount of money. Maybe it was 10 grand for each of us, which is still amazing and lovely. But I'm saying it's not like, he wasn't necessarily buying us off, but he did what he thought was a dutiful thing to do. I knew he didn't believe in extravagant weddings. I knew that but he wasn't telling me any of that. He was like, here's this money, do with it what you will, but this is what it's for. Like, this is gonna check the box of I gave you money towards a wedding if you want a wedding. And that was early on in my life when I never even thought I was gonna get married. I was like, great, I'm gonna put this towards traveling or whatever I wanted to do. Anyway, I wanted to start this episode with the story of my father, and that story continued to develop as I got healthier, as I got in more acceptance, as I mourned the way that I wished my father was, the way that I wished our relationship was. I now had all of this space to accept what actually was good and right and loving about our relationship, but it required me to accept my father's limitations. He was never going to be able to have a super deep emotional conversation like the ones I had with my mother all the time. He didn't have the capability, but it also wasn't his nature. I remember one time talking about some stupid boyfriend I had who was just a friggin' idiot, but anyway, and I said to my father, Dad, it's so weird. Whenever he leaves my apartment on Sundays, I feel like crying, and I don't know why. Now that was just too deep for my dad. And he literally said, what's your problem, pal? I was like, words of wisdom from William M. Cole. What's your problem, pal? He was so cute. Trying, right? Trying, but not being able to. Over those years, though, and through my own therapeutic journey, I decided with one of my sisters in my early 20s that whatever we were going to make of this relationship with our father, because he had already retired. He retired young at 52 or something and moved to Florida. And I was like, Kath, whatever we're going to do, we have to do it, right? If we're going to keep this relationship, and we did. And there's a whole story that I tell in the book about when I was graduating grad school, and I knew my father wasn't going to be able to come. He could not make himself. He hated New York City. He used to work there, didn't love traveling. I knew it was going to be too much for him. So I told my therapist, I'm not going to ask him to go. And she ends up tasking me to ask him, and this is how I learned that my healing was in the asking. And even though I did ask him, and even though he did say no, it opened up this conversation that we never would have had in a million years had I not asked him. He was basically like, are you trying to guilt me? And I was like, no. And then I was able to say, hey, Dad, I can totally accept that it's too much. I honestly can. But no one can replace you. You are my only father. So I just want you to know that your presence in my life matters, that you matter to me, and that I really love you. And of course, he was like, oh my God, he did not know what to do with that. We were driving to the airport as I was leaving his house. But that changed our relationship. And what really happened, you guys, is that changed me. So if you're in a situation with an emotionally distant or absent parent, father in this case, father figure could be, as I like to say, your parental impactors, it's possible that if you look at the ways that this person was able to show up for you, that perhaps you could feel loved in a different way by them. And I'm not guaranteeing that that will work. I'm just saying it was very helpful for me, because at a young age, you don't realize what other people's parental experiences are, right? I could only see what was wrong at the age of 19, but it took a therapist to help me to see what was also right and ways that I could be appreciative for the ways that my father could show up. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you because when my father passed, very suddenly when I was in my early 30s, I did not have regrets. I really had done my best to have him know me and to know him as much as he was willing. Like, I actually could say I did my best. So there was a lot less longing for me than for some of my other siblings, where they didn't put in that effort or didn't have as much therapy as I did. And so his death was devastating in a different way. And trust me, it was devastating. Like, it's to have somebody just die very suddenly, that is, for me, it was so shocking because he wasn't sick, but he just died of a massive heart attack. And that here one day, gone the next, oh, that was a whole trip in itself. But anyway, longest way around the barn to get back to what today's episode is supposed to be about, which is Father's Day. How do we handle it, right? You might be grieving on Father's Day this year or many years. Or maybe you have a complicated relationship with your father. Maybe you never knew your father. Maybe there was total absence. Maybe there was total abandonment, right? Maybe there was just emotional neglect. Maybe you never even knew who your father was. All of those things must be grieved. You have to honor. And people, my therapy clients would say, well, how can I grieve someone I didn't even know? I'm like, you're grieving the dream you had. All of us want our parents, even if they're crappy parents. We want them to love us. We want them to be proud of us. We want them. We need them. This is just human nature. And so even if it's an absent parent, there's a part of you that is sad that you didn't have that experience. In the guide for this episode, I'm going to give you different ways that you can mourn the loss of that dream, because it is so helpful to just honor these feelings. And maybe they're in the basement, right? Maybe they're in your unconscious mind. But if you answer the questions that I'm going to give you in the guide, just go to terricole.com/guide. I think that if there is anything down there to process, you will find it that way. So I want you to give yourself permission, right? Because how can you navigate the complex emotions of this day? Give yourself permission to opt out, right? For those of you, maybe you had a narcissistic father. Maybe you've gone no contact. Maybe you had a toxic relationship with that parent. Give yourself permission to opt out of celebrating it all together, right? A lot of self-care can be really helpful. Ask yourself, what would make me feel nourished? Being alone, being with friends, maybe being away. Really dial into what you need. Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the common challenges that we face if you're grieving on Father's Day. Maybe you had a great relationship with your father and maybe he passed away. Maybe it's straight up grief of that kind of loss. So the challenges are that, it's everywhere. It's everywhere in social media. It's everywhere on television if you watch commercials. Like, everyone seems to be celebrating it and talking about how amazing their parent is, and it can really bring up harmful feelings. So you might want to stay away from the internet. You might want to stay away from social media on this day, right? Do a bunch of things that are good for you, because the commercialization of this day is just off the hook. It's everywhere. It's like billboards, right? So do the best that you can to protect yourself if those things are going to be activating or triggering for you, to basically stay away. And what can you do on that day? Think of something healthy for you. Think of something that would feel good. Another thing that can be amazing is if you have partnered with someone who is a great dad, or if you have great father figures, right? If you've partnered and have children, you can celebrate the hell out of the father who's in your life, meaning the father of your kids, right? If you have a father figure in your life, someone who was there for you, even if they're not your biological father, it doesn't matter, right? Love doesn't care. If somebody loved you and was in your front row and believed in you and was compassionate to you, it could be a teacher. Write them a letter, send them a card, send them an email, pick up the phone. Like, honor what you were gifted in this life. Because just like I was doing when I was younger, it's very easy for us to focus on what we didn't get. And yet, father figures are just as important as actual fathers if the fathers couldn't or wouldn't actively father, right? Even if it was a grandfather or an uncle or a family friend. But really celebrate those people, because that can be really helpful. Self-care, self-compassion is probably going to be the most important thing that you do on this day. And remembering, if you had a great dad and you're sad, remember, honor, right? You can create a tribute or like some kind of a memorial. You can get the family together and tell stories about the person. There's so many different things, right? You can also just write a letter to that person, even if they've passed, or to the absent father figure. Anything that you can journal and get those feelings out on paper is going to alleviate some of the pain that you're in. And you can also seek support from the people in your life. Your close friends know that this is hard for you. A really close friend of mine lost her dad this past year, and someone, of course, I've known. Well, we've been friends since we're 4, so I've known for decades and decades and decades. We're all mourning the loss of this incredibly important person. But Father's Day is going to suck, especially the first year out from that loss. So remember those friends. And if you're that friend, reach out to your friends. Say, I'm having a hard time, right? There are people there who want to be there for you. And sometimes it can be really hard, especially if you're a high-functioning codependent, if you're an overfunctioner, an overgiver. It can be really hard to sort of be the one who needs help. But if you do, ask for it. And if people are offering, allow, right? Allow. And think about the things that also bring you joy. I don't mean bypass your grief, but I feel like we can create a whole day journaling, grieving, doing the right things, but then also things that bring you joy, right? People that bring you joy, spending time with a sentient being, a furry friend that brings you joy, being out in nature. These are all things that can help lift your mood, and they're soothing things to do. So I encourage you to find your own unique way of honoring and remembering if you had a great dad or a great father figure that you've lost, and also giving yourself permission to opt out completely if it's something that is literally just bringing you pain, right? Do something that will self-soothe, because we all have these long histories and stories with our father figures and our mother figures, whoever they are. And it's really our job to make sense of it for ourselves. And I hope that the story that I shared with you about what my therapist said to me, maybe that will lead you to something. And I would love to know if it does. And I'm going to give you some of this information in the guide. So go to terricole.com/guide. But know this, if you're in pain this Father's Day, so am I. And you are not alone, my friend. You are not the only person who had a complicated relationship, or you're not the only person who needs to grieve. So just know that I am holding you in my mind and my heart. And if this was helpful to you and you know someone else who might have father pain, a father wound, please share this with them. I also have a course, a father wound course. It's like a 90-minute type of a thing that you can find at terricole.com. Anything that will lessen your suffering and increase your joy, I am super into. So thank you for spending time with me. I super appreciate you guys. And as always, take care of you.